A long time ago in the city of Athens, people decided that they had enough of being governed by an aristocracy. They decided that the people should from here on in govern themselves, and the word they gave for this form of government is still with us today. It is, of course, democracy. However, the original Athenian form of democracy was naive. Yet it worked very well in Athens. But it couldn't work in our society today. Just look at what Athenian society was like at the time. And look at the people who could actually vote. Because even though it was a democracy, society, I'm afraid, was still divided into a citizenship, the people who were allowed to vote, who could vote, and the rest of the people, the have-nots, the people that don't count, the slaves, and so on. And if you look at the Athenian citizenship, you will find that that was a very uniform group of people. They were all of the same ethnic background. They all had very similar religious beliefs. They all faced the same enemies. So no wonder that if a decision was made by majority rule, not only more often than not would it be the right decision to make for the city, but also people who didn't agree with it, who had voted against it, were usually happy enough to submit to the will of the majority. And society ran smoothly. But try and implement this naive form of democracy in our modern society, and we'll have a disaster on our hands. Our modern societies are not uniform. Our modern societies are incredibly pluralistic. In most of our societies, there are people of many different ethnic backgrounds. In most of our societies, there are people of many different religious backgrounds, or lack thereof. There are people of many different political backgrounds, ideological backgrounds. And they all want to lead their life in different ways. They all want to live their life according to different rules. And they would all look at people of other convictions, of other ethnicities, and maybe think that the way they lead their lives isn't ideal, and they should really change. Imagine in a society like that to have a simple rule of the majority. The will of the majority is law. It would be a recipe for disaster. The majority might decide to enact law that would go against deep-held beliefs within a minority. The majority could decide to enact laws specifically designed to oppress a minority, to stop them from expressing themselves within society. That is not a democracy. That is a dictatorship of the majority. That is why our democracies have enshrined in their laws safeguards to stop this from happening, to stop the majority from oppressing the minority. That is what those safeguards are there for. And the will of the majority sometimes has to give way to these safeguards. And sometimes the majority has to accept that its will cannot be done because it would result in the oppression of individuals or of minority groups. To insist that a modern democracy should be run according to ancient Athenian principles is not just idiotic. it's not just stupid. That would be excusable. I think it's downright criminal. I think, in fact, that for somebody who thinks that a democracy should mean that the majority can impose its will in an unrestricted manner on every individual and minority, is in actual fact a fascist ideology. And it's unacceptable. Add to that the idea that some people who cannot conform to majority rule, who cannot bow to majority rule, who want to live their ways, that live their lives in ways that are not approved of by a majority, and that such people should be, for example, sterilized or even killed. And now you're talking about an ideology that stinks of Nazi Germany. I see very little difference. Where do you draw the line? Where does it stop? Eugenics? Extermination camps? It can all be justified by saying it's the will of the majority. If you want to adopt this naive Athenian model of democracy. And that's why we have to stop that from happening. Democracy is a great thing. But the safeguards we have put in place in our modern societies are there for very, very good reason. And that is so that the privilege of being the ruling majority cannot be used, cannot be abused, and cannot be employed in order to oppress.